We are no longer counting down the days. We are counting down the hours to the national championship. Late this year. Kind of feels weird that we're having it this late, but that's okay. By the way, we are wearing colors for Ohio State and Notre Dame. I don't want to hear about it because green is involved. We also look like Christmas, but as I pointed out, it is the Christmas of the national championship.
I like that.
Or college football, whatever.
First ever 12-team college football playoff, and we have a 7 and 8 seed battling for the Natty at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. It's going to be Ohio State and Notre Dame.
Former Buckeye.
Yeah.
Marcus Freeman.
Yeah, recent history between the two schools. Buckeyes laying 8.5 to 9.5, depending on where you got it and when you got it. But you want a close game, right?
Yes, I don't want some blowout game.
Okay.
I want it close to the end where I'm screaming at my TV and a little nauseous.
We'll get to that with Pate and Danny Kanell in just a second. But guys, great to be with you. We see you're inside. Just give us a sense of the vibe check happening right now.
Vibes. Let's see. We've got bands starting to fill the place in. It's about 20 degrees outside, so we were appropriately dressed. And also, we've got two of the biggest brands in college football here. It's the toughest ticket I ever remember seeing. Danny Kanell here, by the way. It's the toughest ticket I remember seeing in a long time. And yet, I don't expect an open seat in this entire place. It's January 20th. It's been a long time. We're finally here, though.
It has been a really long time. This is how cold it is, Amanda. This is a hand warmer that is here. Now, I was outside, but it's still kind of, I am de-thawing. Like, I'm still, like, warming up. So these will get thrown out sooner rather than later. But it is freezing outside. But it hasn't deterred the fans. I've seen outside, people are tailgating, having fun. But January 20th, it has been a long wait for this one.
To be fair, Danny was in Dallas-Fort Worth where it was cold, and he's backed it up with Atlanta.
And I heard, because we did a segment with them where only Chip could hear what I was saying, I said, who's been the biggest baby? Without question, didn't pause Danny Kanell.
And Bud, we had Bud Elliott in studio, too.
Yeah.
Bud confirmed that, Danny. All right. In terms of what we're seeing on the field tonight, what do you guys make of the storylines that we're seeing? Yeah, it's a 7 and 8 seed, but boy, we have two big-time programs in this one.
Yeah, it's interesting. The 7 and 8 are what ended up at the end of the bracket, because I think, Danny, we all look at it and we say, yeah, technically the 7 and 8 seeds are playing, but in no common sense-based format would Ohio State ever have really been an 8 seed, etc. So I think if we start and we talk about the 12-team format, we're right here at the finish line of the first version. I haven't talked to a single person who doesn't want to see the seeding format overhauled. Like, that's a broad consensus approval. I think when you get down to the mechanics of making it happen, and we're reading headlines, you and I, even as we've been in Atlanta over the weekend, the devil is in the details and the sign-off that you have to get. It's not as simple as saying, oh, everyone wants this. In fact, what fans want has really ever been taken into account at the forefront of college football, at least in recent history. So give me some thoughts, man. Like, first time through this whole thing.
I think it's been a smashing success. I might be biased. I was somebody who's wanted to see expansion for a long time. You were not, right?
Of course not.
We've argued about that on here. But I think even the most ardent critic of the expansion has realized, okay, this was pretty cool. November was more entertaining than we've seen in years past. We've seen programs be in the college football national championship conversation that had never been a part of it before. Teams like Indiana, SMU, Arizona State, Boise State all get an opportunity to play for the national championship, not just get talked about. And then the teams that we drew in that were just on the bubble, the teams like Ole Miss, South Carolina, Miami, Alabama, who was left out, those teams. So more of the college football world, I think, felt like they were a part of the conversation when it mattered the most. The tweaks, totally agree with you. Any common sense person looks at the way the teams are ranked versus the way they're seeded and says, wait a second, this doesn't make very much sense. I think they will address it, but like you, if you are a representative for the Group of Five or the Big 12 or the ACC, you're like, we only have one more year left of this advantage that we have. Why would we give it up? So I think we probably have to wait another year, and I think we're going to get more teams when they come back around for the next phase.
Here's what I've been trying to be very careful of: making definitive statements after version 1 of this. Like right now, we've got the whole seeding conundrum. Whether it's 1 year or 2 years, that probably gets rectified. Now, I happen to be of the opinion that 5 years from now, you probably have guaranteed spots at the table for every conference, and they know how many they have, and whether you and I like that or not, that's probably the way it's going. And there are some benefits to that. It makes you focus on the conference races, blah, blah, blah. But speaking of the conferences, so notable in their absence here tonight, I don't know if you've picked up on this, there's no SEC team in this game tonight. Not that it really has ever mattered to people like me, of course, but to people like you, this matters. So let's try and project this forward a little bit.
Yes.
Are we looking at a blip on the radar screen? Are we looking at a fundamental shift of the tectonic plates under our very college football feet? Are both of those extremes, and it's somewhere in between? Where are we headed here?
I think it's a surprise that the SEC doesn't have a team playing for a national championship, but I also think we're seeing a shift in college football that is parity. We're seeing some of the talent spread throughout, and that has been when there were teams that were amassing all the talent, most of the times those teams resided in the SEC. So you saw incredible runs like we saw at Alabama, like we saw at Georgia, LSU, some of the other SEC teams that were able to win national championships. But I do think with the portal being opened up where you can transfer at any time, I know they're trying to get that under wraps, and with everybody out there being able to pay a roster, you're seeing talent that a lot of times could be hidden and even hoarded on SEC teams start to go say, you know what, I can still get paid and go play there and start right away. A team like Indiana, they're able to get more players to go there. SMU, players that might have been stashed on a roster in the SEC, they can go play in the Big 10, ACC, Big 12, somewhere else. I think that's attributed to it, but don't get me wrong, Pate. The SEC is not going anywhere anytime soon. It is not going to deter them in their efforts to try to get back here. They're not going to relinquish their title as the best conference in college football without a very hard-fought contest. And I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon.
Kind of like SEC shill vibes a little bit from you.
Yeah.
Homer vibes a little. It's Atlanta rubbing
right.
off.
I've been accused of that before. I'm an SEC homer.
So think about this. So we look at our watches that I'm not even wearing, and we're right on the precipice of revenue sharing. No one even knows what that's going to do. Like, no one knows what it means. First off, if every school in a conference agrees to cut $20 million worth of checks, like, not all of them are going to agree to do that. I don't think that's been picked up on quite yet. There's no way to know. It's going to be a Big 10 SEC world. Okay, and then there are going to be a few others proliferating that, but that's the way I look at it. I don't look at it as a conference here, conference there. It's two conferences and everybody else, and we'll probably have more of the same whenever they reconstruct this, which leads me to my next point. I didn't just mention the ACC, and yet the ACC had two teams in this tournament this year, and there's been a lot of talk. Brandon Marcello over at 247sports.com has written an article over the weekend about how maybe the ACC is looking to shift their format, the way they determine a conference champ. I don't think they're alone in this. I just think they're the ones that may be speaking a little more open about it. But you've read the report as well as I do. Thoughts about where that conference may be headed?
First of all, I'm thrilled that Jim Phillips, the commissioner, is actually being proactive, because I think that'd be my one criticism of him throughout his tenure, has been a little bit more reactive to situations that have unfolded unfavorable for the conference. So he's out in the forefront of this saying, you know what, I listened to my coach of SMU, Ed Lashley, say publicly, wait a second, why would we even play in this ACC title game if we lose it and we're left out? So he's recognizing the very real issues that could face the conference. If that game was a blowout, SMU might not have gotten a seat at the table, and that would have been an awful look for the conference. I think he's a little bit off the giving a bye to the team that wins the regular season when you only play 8 conference games, and sometimes there's a big disparity in strength of schedules and who you're facing. You might not have your best team as the one that's represented with the bye to the playoff, and that's what I think you would want to do, give your best team the biggest advantage. I kind of like the 4-team idea at the end of the season, having a 2-week little mini playoff to get your best foot forward. Ultimately, I don't know if it changes and allows them to get 2. I think they would still get 2 in. I think getting 3 is just going to have to be a rare scenario where you have 3 powerhouses, which if you do, I think you'll get them in. I think it'll sell itself on the field.
I think what the ACC is talking about there, the Big 10 will talk about, the SEC will talk about, and that is finding some really, really crystallized way to facilitate advantage to your conference champ. If that means declaring them and they not even play for a game and they get a bye into the playoff, and then you have a couple of play-in games for your other guaranteed chairs at the table, so be it. The problem is what you just said. The conferences are never going to get smaller. They're not shrinking in size. So how do you ever, in a disproportionately weighted schedule dynamic right now, like, how do you determine definitively who your best teams are? I don't know what the answer there is. I do know that behind us on this field in a few few hours, we will at least get an answer about, you know, the national championship of 2024/2025. Ohio State's favored big by championship game standards. I think they should be. I wonder if you see a path, and if it is, what's the best path for Notre Dame to win this thing tonight? And give me your pick, too.
It's interesting you asked it that way, because that's the way I kind of approach this game the whole time, is how does Notre Dame make this a game? Because if you went position by position, you know, skill group by skill group across the board, I think Ohio State has an advantage almost across the board. Maybe in the secondary you give the edge to Notre Dame, but I think the way they keep this a game is make it ugly. Like, bring Ohio State in the mud, making it slop, and just make it a slobber knocker of a game where the defenses are kind of on full display, and your offense, it may not look pretty, you're extending drives. Riley Leonard's getting some of that ugly hidden yardage. Jeremiah Love is carrying guys in the end zone just like he did against Penn State. That, to me, would be the recipe. Can they do it is a much better, different question. I like Ohio State to win, but I do like the under in this game. Probably is my favorite play.
I got to go Ohio State, too. There's a path. When I envision this, I envision it going like 23-13, something like that. Maybe that Texas game 2.0, Ohio State pulls away late. There's just so much that has to go right for Notre Dame. And while it's not hard for me to envision it, it's tough for me to predict it. So, boring. We got Buckeyes winning, both of us tonight.
That is boring, but that's fine. We love you guys. Have fun out there. Danny, toughen up. It's not that cold. You're inside. Okay, so we were talking about the ticket prices, right? Which are outrageous. I found out something fun. I actually didn't know this about Mercedes-Benz. Very reasonable food. They keep it fan-friendly.
Yes.
So you have $10. It is $2 for non-alcoholic drinks, like soda,
Yep.
$2 for hot dogs, popcorn, and pretzels,
Okay.
$3 for water, pizza, not just fries, and $5 for a beer.
2 beers, thank you.
That's just it.
Right,
That's
I mean,
it?
2 beers.
No food?
No. Unless I've already had the beers before the game, then maybe I will then go to hot dogs, popcorns, and pretzels, and then maybe 1 soda.
Yeah.
Like 4 things, all 4 things, and then the soda.
Or 2 beers.
Or 2 beers.
Or that's it. Okay, I appreciate that.
Cover 3 podcast. So we've had half of the guys on the show today. Bud Elliott and Danny Kanell. There's also Chip Patterson and Tom Fornelli. Check them out. And Josh Pate has his own show 3 times a week, although he's been much busier this time of year. Also, check out his show on YouTube.